This format is packed with so many powerful decks, and Tearlament is no exception. But when it comes to tier, people are always questioning whether or not you should be playing the Horus cards, and I'm here to say they're actually really broken. What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Cards and Coffee. Today we're going to be going over my Tearlament Horus deck. Personally, one of my favorite decks to pilot this format. When building tier, it can be a little awkward because you're juggling the consistency versus good optimal mills, and this is the main reason why people shy away from the Horus cards, because they aren't that great to mill. But trust me when I say these cards add a lot of consistency to the deck by filtering out the cards you don't want in your hand, while also giving you other ways to mill and insane cards to help you break boards. So many decks in this format are just itching to remove the cards that are on your field, like SP Little Knight. So by having these big boss monsters that will just generate free advantage while your cards get removed from the field, offer so much advantage in the meta today. But of course, before we hop into all that, make sure you guys go grab yourself a cup of coffee or something. That way you guys can sit down and tune in. So it's been a little while, I've been busy with life stuff, but I've been playing this game nonstop, and I currently love this format. Tier always has been one of my personal favorites, so any format that I get the chance to play, you better believe I'm gonna find a way. But before we hop into the profile, I just want to give a quick shout out to this channel's new partner, Imperium Duelist. They've recently sent me a bunch of product to test out, and I have really been enjoying these Pegasus sleeves. I'm sure you hear it from all the competitors, they really do feel like the old PC whites. So if that's something you enjoy in your sleeves as well, make sure you guys go check them out. But they also have a bunch of over sleeves, dice, deck boxes, mats, you name it. Plus, if you use my code COFFEE10, you'll also save 10% at checkout, so make sure you use that code. But without wasting any more time, for the Tearlaments, we're playing 3 of the Cash Tira, 3 copies of Rhinoheart, and of course, 3 of the Fusers, the Merly, Havanus, and the Shiren. This lineup is very standard, but the Rhinoheart does flex between 2 and 3 depending on the build. I actually cut Baron de Fleur for some space in the extra deck, so I really valued the Bahamut Shark play. That's why I maxed out on the Rhinohearts. But as mentioned, we are playing the Horus cards, and I know consistency is something that people are concerned about, so by playing 3 Rhinoheart, it just increases the likelihood of milling it, or of course just opening Tearlament names in the process. And now, speaking of the Horus cards, for my lineup, of course I'm playing 3 Imseti, but I'm only opting to run 1 copy of Happy. Obviously, Imseti is the starter of the deck alongside Sarcophagus, getting access to these cards to set up rank 8 plays or help you break boards. Happy really is the hard brick of this engine, which is why I'm only opting to play 1 other Horus card. Worst case scenario, Imseti is a dark, so it does help you make Mud Dragon, which is an insane card in this format, especially against Rescue Ace. Now, really quickly, as mentioned, these cards are really great at playing into boards because while they're on the field, if one of your cards leaves the field by your opponent's card effect, whether it's Destruction or SP Little Knight or anything of that nature, Imseti will let you send a card your opponent controls to the grave, and Happy adds any 2 cards from your deck back to hand. It can also shuffle them as well, which is something that can come up, but you know, a free +2 is always something I want, especially when playing into a board. Then of course, for the next best engine in this deck, of course, the Ishizus, the Millers, the Shufflers, so versatile in this deck, and you have to play them. Another perk to these Horus cards is it's another way to get these out of your hand, plus any of the other bricks that you might just want in the grave. It's so nice having 2 Millers in your deck, plus the Horus engine to essentially act like a Miller, being able to mill 4 from you and your opponent's deck by going into Zombie Vampire. And of course, for the last pseudo fairy support, we have 1 Diviner. I didn't want to play multiples because I don't want to clog my normal summon, and again, it's just so good in this deck, plus being a level 6 to set up Beatrice is obviously really good for this deck. But that's it for the main engine of this deck. It really gets going really fast. For some of the supporting cards, we are still playing the Destiny Heroes, of course, alongside the Denier. There's no way I'm not playing these cards. Beatrice is insane, plus Denier setting up free Link 2s constantly is so good, especially now that we have SP Little Knight. In addition, I'm also running a Danger package, but I have cut down on it. Personally, these are some of my least favorite cards in the deck, and I really just don't want to play them, but you do need consistency in the deck, being able to filter cards out of your hand to kind of draw, and of course, being a dark aqua to set up Garura or potentially Kaleido Heart is really great with Nessie. And then Mothman's just the awkward card you have to play because, well, you're playing Nessie. And then the last monster in the deck that I'm opting to play is kind of a brick, but it does set up Beatrice, and I really love this card. Unchained Soul of Shyama obviously has seen a lot of popularity popularity in this deck, whether you're playing the Horus cards or not. But again, by playing the Horus cards, it's just another way to get this card out of your hand. But constantly I'm popping my Soliacs or Screams that I set face down. Heck, there's even times where I'll just like set a Havanus and then pop it to bring this back as well. This card is so versatile in what it can do. Plus, don't forget, while it's on the field, you can pop your own cards, you know, to trigger effects and then pop your opponent's back row. So that actually comes up quite often. Now, moving on to the spells, this is where you'll find my non-engine, which is actually only 3 copies of Super Polymerization. Space is very tight, especially with the Horus cards, and you don't want too much non-engine because, again, the more you play, then the worse your mills get, even though it does help when playing into boards. Plus, we did make room for an extra Super Poly target in the deck, so make sure you stick around for that so you can see what I'm playing. But then after that, of course, we're playing 3 copies of the field spell. Paraloreno is insane, and there's no world I'm not playing 3. One thing to note is I'm not playing Terraforming. Instead, I'm opting to just go with Foolish Burial Goods because, again, Foolish Burial Goods does dump the Trivy Karma, which, again, essentially makes this a Terraforming itself. So when it came down to deciding between Terraforming or Goods, obviously this card's just way more versatile, and so for that reason, it earned the main deck slot. Obviously, we're going to be playing Foolish Burial as well. This card is really insane for the deck, just being able to hand pick whatever you need, or at a bare minimum, throw a Gito in the grave, that way you can get going. And as mentioned, I am playing 2 copies of King Sarcophagus. You could even play 3, but I don't think there's ever a world where I'd entertain playing 1. Yeah, I understand it is a bad mill, but like I said, this is just one of the best cards to start with. It really gets your whole deck going and gets those bad cards out of your hand as well. With these and the Imsetis, it gives you 5 copies of Sarcophagus essentially to get your deck going. I personally think that's a really good number, but I wouldn't go any less, but I wouldn't judge you if you decided to bump it up to 3 because, you know, it is a little awkward if you mill both of these Sarcophaguses. Then for the last spell, we're playing 2 copies of Scream. I think 2 is plenty enough, and I don't really think you need 3, especially if you're trying to fit in non-engine. And then for the traps, 2 Soliac, obviously, and as mentioned, the 1 Trivy Karma. This makes for a solid 40, and trust me, test this deck out yourself. It's so much fun to play. So as I say in every Tearlament video, the hardest part to build is the extra deck, and we're going to go over what changes I've made. But really quickly, I just want to thank everybody who's subscribed to the channel. We are so close to 10,000 subscribers. I cannot believe it. As mentioned, Imperium Duelist has sent a bunch of products, so once we hit that 10K mark, we're going to be doing another giveaway. Plus, as you know, we have a bunch of other partners on the channel as well, so when we hit 10K, I'm going to have so much stuff to give away. But now, moving on to the extra deck, we of course have Kaleidoheart, the main boss monster of this deck. Then we have the 1 Draco Stapelia, our secondary interruption if we already have Kaleidoheart in circulation. Then we are playing the Destiny Heroes, so we play the Dangerous to set up our Beatrice plays, while also setting up insane link climbing plays with the Denier. Then for one of the best extra deck monsters right now, Mud Dragon is so good into so many matchups. This card by itself can basically solo the Rescue Ace matchup if timed correctly. I've even seen players put Instant Fusion back into their tier deck. Even though we don't have Kit Kalos, they just really value that Mud Dragon. We're also playing the Garura, obviously. Setting up rank 6 plays for Beatrice is really great. Plus, I'm constantly using this to chain block my SP Little Knight when I use it as a material, so that's another cool trick you can do. Again, a lot of these also act like super poly targets, and as mentioned, we are playing an additional target. We are playing the Guilty Gearfried. We do have a lot of warriors with different attributes in our deck, so even if our opponent only has 1 warrior on their field, like SP Little Knight, then as long as you have a different attribute like Rhinoheart, then it makes Super Poly live. But of course, you also have the Destiny Heroes, which are darks. You also have your SP Little Knight as well, so that's pretty neat. I've seen a lot of popularity in the Ricardetto build of Rescue Ace, and they'll go SP Little Knight with Baron de Fleur, so Super Poly just cleans that board up real swiftly. But really, any deck that makes Baron de Fleur as well makes it to where any of your warriors can basically help you out it with Super Poly. This card is definitely debatable to have in the main deck. You could even opt to side it, that way you have more room in the extra. But since I'm main decking the Super Poly, I just want to make sure that card's as powerful as it can be right out the gate. Now, moving on to the Exceeds, we have the Totally Awesome. As mentioned, we bring it out with the Bahamut Shark. This engine is so great for the deck, not only putting up the Omni Negate, but also giving you recursion by recycling your waters. Plus, honestly, there's so many times going into a board where I'll just go Bahamut into Toad and then just instantly link them off into SP Little Knight. Since you're using an extra deck monster, now you can banish one of their cards, plus you get to chain block it with the Toad effect to recycle something from the grave. Plus, one thing to note is Totally Awesome is an Aqua for Kaleidoheart, which actually comes up way more than I ever expected. For the other Exceeds, we are still running Abyss Dweller. I expect the Mirror to be running around, plus Unchained as well. We have Time Thief Redoer. I know some people have also opted to cut this card, but I just feel like this card's so versatile for what this deck needs. We have the Beatrice, of course. This is one of the best cards in the deck, if not the best card. It really just gets the whole deck going. If you have nothing else going, just get to Beatrice and then you can start playing. And then the last Exceed is the Zombie Vampire. This card is so crazy. Being able to mill 4 from both players' deck and then just summon 1 to the field sets up so many plays. You already have Kelbeck and Agito to help you mill, but now having a way in your extra deck to get going as well really adds a lot of consistency to the deck. Plus, one thing to note is if ever you took one of your opponent's monsters, no matter its level, you can treat it as a level 8 and make your zombie vampire that way. Most of the time this comes up with Dark, which has personally become one of my favorites in this extra deck because it sets up SP Little Knight so easily. I know so many decks abuse Little Knight right now, but it feels so amazing in Tearlaments specifically. For the last Link 2 that we're playing, it's just the sprint. Again, another thing to help you get going, and we're actually opting to not play Cross Sheep, even though that is something I do miss from time to time. I will say though, Cross Sheep at times feels a bit win more, meaning anytime I would use it, I was already in a winning position, so I really didn't need it. And yes, while bringing back like a Rhino Heart on your opponent's turn is really crazy, this deck gets going into Kaleido Heart very easily on your turn, so I don't know. While Cross Sheep's amazing and definitely something I would consider playing, I don't think you need to play it as a staple in your 15 cards in your extra. But that's going to wrap things up for today's deck profile. Thanks again for tuning in. I really appreciate all the support. If you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We are so close to 10K. It is so amazing. But once again, thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate all of you. And here's hoping to see you on the next one. Peace.